Imagine standing in front of a painting created nearly 600 years ago. At first, it feels familiar. A wealthy man kneels in prayer before the Virgin Mary. An angel hovers above, lowering a magnificent golden crown onto her head. The scene is calm, balanced, and deeply religious, exactly what you would expect from a 15th century masterpiece. But then, your eyes begin to wander. You notice the fur lining the man's robe. Every strand seems soft enough to touch. The gold embroidery catches the light exactly as real metal would. The polished marble reflects a faint glow, while the folds of crimson fabric ripple with astonishing depth. For a moment, you forget you're looking at paint. And that's when the real mystery begins. Because every surface in this painting behaves as if it exists in the real world. Wood feels solid. Stone feels cold. Silk looks delicate enough to wrinkle beneath your fingers. Even today, surrounded by digital photography and ultra-high-resolution cameras, it is difficult to believe that all of this was created by hand. No microscopes, no modern brushes, no optical devices, just one artist, and an extraordinary level of patience. This is Jan van Eyck's The Madonna of Chancellor Rollin, completed around 1435. Nearly 6 centuries have passed since its creation, yet historians still struggle to explain how one man achieved such breathtaking realism with the tools available during his lifetime. At first glance, the painting seems almost simple. On one side sits the Virgin Mary, quietly holding the Christ child. Above her, an angel gently lowers an ornate crown decorated with pearls and precious stones. Opposite her kneels Nicholas Rollin. If you lived in 15th century Burgundy, you would have recognized his name immediately. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a prince. But he was one of the most powerful men in Europe. As Chancellor of Burgundy, Rollin advised dukes, negotiated treaties, controlled enormous wealth, and helped shape the future of one of the richest courts on the continent. He had everything a man could desire: power, influence, luxury, respect. Yet despite all of it, he commissioned a painting that showed him not as a ruler, but as a humble man on his knees. Why? That's where the story becomes far more personal. By the time this painting was commissioned, Rollin had reached a stage of life where success no longer answered life's biggest questions. No amount of wealth could stop time. No political victory could prevent death. Like countless powerful figures before him, he began thinking about what would happen after his earthly life ended. So instead of commissioning another portrait celebrating his achievements, he commissioned a prayer that would never stop being spoken. Every brushstroke became an act of devotion. Every detail reflected his hope that one day he might stand before heaven with the same humility shown here. But Jan van Eyck wasn't interested in creating an ordinary devotional image. He wanted to build something far more extraordinary. At first, your attention remains fixed on the 2 central figures. Then, almost without realizing it, your eyes drift beyond the arches behind them. And suddenly, the painting opens into another world. A vast river winds through an enormous city. Stone bridges stretch across the water. Tiny boats glide silently downstream. Church towers rise toward the sky. Roads disappear into distant mountains wrapped in soft blue haze. The further you look, the larger the world becomes. Most paintings of the 15th century used landscapes as little more than decorative backgrounds. Van Eyck did something completely different. He painted an entire civilization. Look closely enough and you'll notice people crossing the bridge. Each figure has its own posture, its own silhouette, its own destination. They're incredibly small, yet somehow, every single one remains perfectly recognizable. Then your eyes find the river. Small boats float peacefully across its surface. Even more astonishing, their reflections appear in the water below. Think about that for a second. Van Eyck wasn't satisfied with painting tiny boats almost invisible to the naked eye. He also painted their reflections correctly, at a scale so small most viewers never notice them. It almost feels obsessive. But that obsession is exactly what makes this painting unforgettable. This is why one famous art historian described Van Eyck's vision as working like both a microscope and a telescope at exactly the same time. He could observe the smallest detail with incredible precision, while simultaneously creating landscapes that seem to stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Few artists in history have ever balanced those two abilities so perfectly. And yet, the landscape isn't the only place hiding secrets. Look above Chancellor Rollins' head. Most visitors ever do, because they're too distracted by the glittering gold, the magnificent architecture, and the endless scenery beyond. But carved into the stone are tiny biblical scenes. Adam and Eve being driven from paradise, Cain murdering Abel, Noah in a moment of human weakness. These aren't random decorations. They're reminders that every human being, even the wealthiest and most powerful, shares the same fallen nature. The message couldn't be clearer. Rollin may have possessed enormous political authority, but before God, he was simply another man seeking mercy. And once you realize that, you begin to understand something remarkable. Nothing inside this painting exists simply because it looks beautiful. Every object, every carving, every flower, every color, every tiny figure in the distance has been placed with purpose. It's almost as though Van Eyck created two paintings at once. One that anyone could admire, and another hidden beneath the surface, waiting patiently for curious eyes to uncover it. And in the next part, we'll step even deeper into that hidden world. Because scattered throughout the garden, the architecture, and even among the smallest figures in the distance are symbols that many viewers completely miss. Some may even reveal that Jan van Eyck secretly painted himself into the masterpiece. The longer you look at the Madonna of Chancellor Rollin, the more you realize something extraordinary. Jan van Eyck wasn't simply painting what he could see. He was hiding messages inside almost everything. And once you begin noticing them, it's impossible to stop. Start with the garden just beyond the marble columns. At first, it feels like nothing more than a peaceful place filled with flowers and trees. But in the 15th century, people didn't see gardens the way we do today. Every flower carried a meaning. Every plant told a story. Every bird was part of a language that educated viewers immediately understood. Those white lilies growing quietly near the Virgin weren't chosen because they looked beautiful. They represented purity. The irises nearby hinted at the suffering Mary would one day endure. Even the carefully arranged trees weren't placed randomly. Everything inside the garden reminded the viewer that this wasn't simply a meeting between a wealthy politician and the Virgin Mary. It was a journey from earthly power toward eternal salvation. But Van Eyck didn't stop there. As your eyes continue exploring the scene, you begin noticing birds wandering through the garden. Most people barely acknowledge them. Yet medieval viewers would have understood their meaning immediately. Peacocks symbolized immortality. They were believed to represent eternal life because their flesh was thought to resist decay. Nearby, magpies carried a completely different warning. They often represented pride, vanity, and the temptation of worldly success. It's almost as if Van Eyck was reminding Chancellor Rollin that the greatest danger facing powerful men wasn't poverty. It was believing their power would last forever. But perhaps the strangest detail of all is hidden so far in the background that many visitors never notice it. High above the river, two tiny figures lean over the castle wall. They're almost invisible. One wears blue. The other wears a bright red robe. For centuries, historians have debated who they might be. One theory refuses to disappear. Many believe the figure dressed in red is Jan Van Eyck himself, not standing proudly in the foreground, not signing his name across the painting. Instead, quietly watching his own masterpiece from a distance. If that's true, then one of history's greatest painters left behind one of history's most subtle self-portraits. You could stand in front of this painting for years and never realize the artist may have been looking back at you the entire time. But hidden symbols alone don't explain why this painting still amazes experts. Its greatest mystery lies in something far less obvious: the paint itself. Modern technology has allowed conservators to look beneath the finished surface without damaging the artwork. What they discovered surprised everyone. Van Eyck didn't simply paint the image once. He built it in stages. First, he created an incredibly detailed monochrome underpainting. Every figure, every building, every shadow, every fold of fabric, carefully planned before color was ever added. Only after everything was perfect did he begin applying dozens of transparent layers of oil paint, one layer after another, again and again, sometimes waiting days for each layer to dry before continuing. It was a painfully slow process, but it produced something no one had seen before. Light didn't just sit on the surface. It traveled through the layers, bounced back, and created a glow that still feels alive nearly 6 centuries later. That's why the gold seems to shine. Why polished marble ray flecks light. Why velvet appears soft. Why distant mountains disappear naturally into blue haze. Van Eyck wasn't painting objects. He was painting light itself. And somehow, he understood how light behaves long before science fully explained it. As the landscape stretches toward the horizon, the colors slowly become cooler. The details soften. The atmosphere grows lighter. Today we call this atmospheric perspective. To us, it feels completely natural. But in the early 15th century, it was revolutionary. Nothing about this painting feels forced. Nothing feels artificial. Everything exists exactly as our eyes expect it to. That's what makes it so convincing. Then there's another decision that changed European painting forever. Look carefully at the two central figures. Notice something unusual. Chancellor Rollin and the Virgin Mary are almost the same size. That may not seem surprising today, but in Van Eyck's time, it was almost unheard of. Most religious paintings made donors appear tiny, small enough to remind everyone of their place before heaven. Van Eyck chose something completely different. He placed them together, inside the same space, sharing the same light, breathing the same air. Not because Rollin was equal to the Virgin, but because faith had brought the human world and the divine world together. There are no dramatic miracles, no explosions of heavenly light, no angels filling the sky. Everything happens in silence. And somehow, that silence makes the scene feel even more powerful. By now, you may think you've uncovered every secret this masterpiece has to offer. But Van Eyck saved perhaps his greatest achievement, for the part almost nobody ever notices. Because the painting itself may not represent a real place at all. The city, the river, the castles, the mountains. Historians have searched for centuries trying to identify them. Some resemble places Van Eyck knew. Others don't exist anywhere. It's almost as though he stitched together fragments of the real world, creating a landscape balanced perfectly between reality and paradise. And in the final part, we'll discover why, even after 600 years of scientific research, experts still admit there are aspects of this painting they cannot fully explain. Because the closer they look, the more mysterious it becomes. By now, you've uncovered the hidden symbols. You've seen the impossible details. You've even discovered how Jan van Eyck carefully built the painting layer by layer. So, surely there can't be many secrets left. Or can there? Because the strange thing about the Madonna of Chancellor Rollin is that every time experts believe they've finally understood it, the painting gives them another mystery to solve. For centuries, people admired it simply because it was beautiful. But modern technology allowed researchers to look beneath its surface without touching a single brushstroke. What they found completely changed the way historians understood Van Eyck. Hidden beneath the finished painting were delicate underdrawings, tiny corrections, small adjustments, evidence that the artist constantly refined his work instead of blindly following a fixed design. Even after planning every detail, he continued asking himself one question: can this be made even better? It was perfection pursued one brushstroke at a time. Yet here's what makes the discovery so fascinating. The technology explains how Van Eyck worked, but not why the finished result still feels so different from every other painting of its time. Scientists can identify the pigments. They can study the wooden panel. They can even recreate many of his techniques. And still, there remains something impossible to measure. The way light seems to breathe across the marble. The way polished metal appears to glow from within. The way distant mountains fade naturally into the horizon. It's an illusion that refuses to give away all of its secrets. And perhaps, that's exactly why people keep returning to it. Stand a few steps away from the painting, and it appears to be a peaceful religious scene. Walk a little closer. Suddenly, the textures begin to emerge. The embroidered fabrics, the carved stone, the reflections in the river. Move even closer, and the painting almost transforms into another world. Tiny figures crossing bridges, boats drifting through the water, windows no larger than the head of a pin. Every minute detail revealing another piece of the story. It's impossible to absorb everything in a single glance. Van Eyck never intended you to. He wanted the painting to reward patience. The longer you stayed, the more it revealed. But perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't technical at all. It was philosophical. Before Van Eyck, many artists treated nature as little more than a backdrop, a stage upon which religious stories unfolded. Van Eyck saw something entirely different. To him, nature wasn't decoration. It was part of the miracle. Every stone, every tree, every reflection, every cloud, every distant building deserved exactly the same care as the sacred figures themselves. Because the visible world was itself a reflection of divine order. That single idea transformed European painting. Future generations would chase greater realism, better perspective, more convincing light, richer color. But Van Eyck had already shown them something far more important. Observation itself could become a form of devotion. Looking carefully could be an act of faith. Even today, standing before the original painting is a completely different experience from seeing it in a book or on a screen. Your eyes refuse to stay still. They travel from the faces to the fabrics, from the architecture to the river, then toward the tiny city disappearing into the mountains. Every journey reveals another detail you somehow missed before. That is the painting's greatest illusion. Not that it tricks your eyes, but that it convinces your mind there's always something else waiting to be discovered. Nearly 600 years have passed since Jan van Eyck completed this masterpiece. Empires have risen and fallen. Kingdoms have disappeared. Entire artistic movements have come and gone. Yet this single wooden panel continues to stop people in their tracks. Not because it's the largest, not because it's the most famous, but because it quietly challenges every person who stands before it. How could one man create something so unbelievably real? Perhaps we'll never know. And maybe that's exactly how Van Eyck would have wanted it. Because some masterpieces aren't meant to be completely understood. They're meant to be explored. Again and again. And every single visit uncovers something new. That is why the Madonna of Chancellor Rollin isn't simply remembered as one of the greatest paintings of the Northern Renaissance. It remains one of the greatest demonstrations of what human patience, imagination, and observation can achieve. And perhaps that's the real miracle hidden inside this remarkable work. Not the symbols, not the technique, not even the extraordinary realism, but the simple fact that after almost 600 years, it can still make us stop, look closer, and wonder. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden world inside this masterpiece, let me know which details surprised you the most. Was it the microscopic city, the hidden symbols, or the possibility that Jan van Eyck secretly painted himself into his own creation? Share your thoughts below, and if you'd like to explore more masterpieces filled with mysteries, don't forget to subscribe. There's always another story waiting behind the next painting.